What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 88. We're finally to week one. Finally get to preview real games instead of just teams. Man, just super excited to be here. Me and Corbin were talking today, and I was like, man, this is about as excited as I've ever been to record a podcast. I was texting at work, like, hey, man, I can't wait to get home and do this and talk about these games. And I've got some good matchups this weekend to kick off the season. Um, we're going to recap a little bit of week zero first before we jump into our week one previews. Really, a couple matchups to talk about from week zero. Obviously, Vandy and Hawaii in Nashville. I will say I was pretty harsh on Hawaii going into this game, kind of based on what happened last year, but I got to give them a lot of credit. They really played better than I expected. I hope y'all took the over 55 and a half, I believe it was, that cashed out. The Vandy line didn't end up cashing out. I believe it's 17 and a half. And like I said, got to give Hawaii a lot of credit. They played them closer than expected. Definitely made a lot of big gains from a year ago. So I want to give them credit. But kind of just what your thoughts on what you saw from Vandy, and obviously didn't cover the 17 and a half for you.
Yeah, that was a dagger. I mean, I ended up evening that. Actually, I only lost $10 because I bet 110 on the spread and 110 on the over. So one of them hit, ended up losing $10. Not terrible, but they had it. I mean, they had it to the fourth quarter and then blew it. They had a 3-touchdown lead and then blew it. However, Vandy's going to lose a lot more football games than I was expecting them to if they keep playing like this because they got ran all over. The quarterback was tossing bombs down the field. Their defensive backs kept getting beat deep. I mean, time after time after time, they were able to drive the ball down the field. So Vandy's got a lot of work to do before they get into SEC play. And we talked about this 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, that conference games and then 8 straight SEC games. So it could get super ugly for them because they could not get any pressure on the quarterback. They really weren't great at stopping the run. And then on the offensive side, they were able to, put drives together, and they made some big plays, and they capitalized on Hawaii's mistakes. But a lot of these teams that they're going to be playing this year are not going to be making the same mistakes that Hawaii is. Vandy's special teams bailed them out a couple of times. They had an early kick return for a touchdown, and then they went for 2 and ended up getting it the second time. But Hawaii had a fair amount of turnover. I know they threw 2 picks, and I believe they had a fumble that they lost. So they had a bunch of penalties as well. So Vandy was helped out for sure. And then in the fourth quarter, Hawaii made a strong comeback and was almost, pulled it in there. They had an interception in the end zone in the first half. Vandy intercepted it in the end zone after Hawaii made a great drive. But that doesn't happen. It's a tie game at the end of the game. So I know it's week 0 or week 1 for that team or for Vandy and Hawaii. So they're going to get much, much better. I get that. But they got a long way to go if they want to be where we thought they were going to be at 6-6, because looking at that team, watching that team, they might win 3 games, maybe. Like they looked a lot worse, returning, I think 16 total players or 17, whatever it was. They looked really bad from what I was expecting to see from them.
Yeah, I think obviously it's real early. I'm not expecting a ton from Vandy this year, but I do think that they'll be better. And I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of teams, it's typical, start a little slow out the gate.
Right.
But like you said, I was expecting a little bit bigger victory, over Hawaii. But like I said, I do want to give Hawaii credit because they battled and played a lot tougher than I thought. And to be honest,
running back was good.
Yeah, I like them over Stanford this week. Stanford's got to travel to Hawaii, and Stanford is a very bad Power 5 team. So
Yeah.
Hawaii could pull the upset there. I think Hawaii's a little bit of an underdog, so I definitely think they cover.
You lay the line on Hawaii?
I may lay the line on Hawaii, man. I mean, they impressed me. I mean, to come to Nashville and play like they did, against the SEC team. I mean, they've certainly made big strides and looked much more competitive than any point last year. So we'll see what happens with them, but I think they could pull the upset on Stanford a little bit come this weekend.
Early hot take.
I tell you another game, one of the better ones from the weekend, I guess you could say, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams, put on a show against San Jose State. The defense, obviously for USC, didn't look great. I do want to say with this, though, this felt very much like a scrimmage. This really didn't even
Yeah.
feel like a game hardly because, man, USC rotated a ton of guys, especially on defense. So I don't want to look too much into this one because you look at USC's schedule and it's pretty backloaded. Like the first 5 or 6 games are very, very weak. So I think you're going to see a lot of this early. But yeah, it really felt more like a scrimmage than really a week one type of game or week zero type of game, because they just rotated so many guys in. So I don't want to put too much stock into it, but ultimately, I think you're going to see a lot of the same problems that's kind of haunted Lincoln Riley his whole career. Is
Yeah.
we know what he is offensively, we know what kind of quarterbacks and skill players he has, but is the defense ever going to develop enough to be a legit title contender? Like he's made the playoffs, but
Mhm.
can he do enough on the defensive side to get over that hump? And I think that's still to be determined. I do think they'll probably be a little bit better defensively, but um, then again, I don't want to take too much stock into a week zero game.
Yeah,
Um,
and San Jose State's quarterback, that dude's a baller, bro.
yeah,
That dude is good. He put on a show in the first half for sure. He was running for his life, really, but he was making some plays with his feet, do a couple bombs, but that dude's an athlete.
yeah. So, and I know Auburn wasn't great. I believe it was last year, and I know Auburn wasn't great, but they came in and played Auburn tough, like they've done this before. Um, so they, like I said, they play teams competitive and can put some points on the board. So, um, another team that looks really good in week zero, and I think better than a lot of people thought was Notre Dame.
Oh
Um,
my God.
I think with Sam Hartman there, they really have a legit quarterback now. So a lot of people are thinking they might can make some noise. They got a huge game against Ohio State in a couple weeks. They play USC as well. So they've got a chance to make some legit noise. And I think they're more equipped to do so maybe than they have been because they have the quarterback that can elevate them a little bit. So, but overall, a really good week zero performance. I know it was against Navy, but um,
Yeah, their
the
running
line
back room looked great, dude. They have three deep running backs that are all running back one. Really, that those boys can run the ball. Number 7, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. He had a fantastic game. I mean, all they had to do was just hand it to him, and they would have won the game if Sam Hartman would have never thrown a pass. And then Sam Hartman did not throw an incomplete pass in the second half. I know he didn't throw it too much in the second half, but every pass he made in the second half was a completion. So them boys came out there ready to go. And like you said, it was against Navy. It's nothing to really hang your hat on, but I won some money off them, so I was happy. But that was a fantastic game to open up the season. In Ireland, it was 1:30 kickoff our time. So
yeah.
great game one for the 2023 college football season. They put on a show, but yeah, them boys can run the football.
Yeah, I mean, I think with last year they started off so rocky, and then Marcus Freeman was kind of able to right the ship a little bit, and I think people were maybe a little bit down on them coming into this year. But I think they could be poised to surprise some people, and they're certainly are not a team you're going to want to play. I mean, like I said, they've got a couple huge games coming up later in the season, so I'm excited to see what they can do and see if they can be a legit, playoff kind of caliber team. Because they've got the schedule to be able to cause some chaos a little bit,
Oh
and
yeah,
they got a really good quarterback to be able to pull off an upset or two. So I'm excited to see what they do moving forward. Like I said, I think week 4 they play Ohio State, so that's going to be exciting. But kind of pivoting now to week 1, what we really want to talk about here. Got some huge games in the SEC. We got 3 or 4 we're really going to focus on, and then we'll jump into some other matchups. Most of the league is kind of a easier week 1. Speak for Alabama specifically, they got Middle Tennessee State. Auburn's got UMass, who actually played in week 0. But a lot of the leagues opening up with a little bit easier team to start, maybe have a little bit harder matchup in week 2 or week 3 for some of those teams. But man, kicking off tomorrow night, and if y'all are listening to this, it's probably already Thursday. That means it'll be game day for Florida at Utah. Some big news came down today. Cam Rising is not expected to play in this game. He tore his ACL in the Rose Bowl against Penn State. So this was something that's not totally unexpected. I mean, only 8 months removed. You know, it was going to be pushing it to be back for this game. And then their star tight end, Brant Keithy, he's not expected to play either. So it's two really huge losses for Utah. I mean, this a veteran team that's, I believe, 25-1 at home since 2018. So I mean, this is a tough place to come in and win at. Is a super veteran team. Kyle Whittingham does a great job, super underrated. How he continually has this program. You know, they're back-to-back Pac-12 champs. They've won, of the last 3 full seasons, they've won double-digit games. So, I mean, this is a really legit program that I think doesn't get talked about enough. But looking at this from the Florida perspective, obviously getting the win over Utah last year was huge to kick off the Billy Napier era. But I just think what this could do if Florida could go out and potentially win this game, what kind of springboard that could be for them this year to possibly overachieve a little bit. They got a great opportunity ahead of them with Cam Rising, you know, being out of the lineup more than likely. So kind of give me your thoughts on this matchup, what you're looking forward to. And we got a good one kicking off Thursday night.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody knows my thoughts on Florida. I've been pretty clear about it. I'm not high on them. I don't think they're going to be very good this year, but they do get lucky coming out of here with Cam Rising, one of the better players in college football, not going to be playing this week. Utah still is a 4.5-point favorite. I'm probably going to lay off this game. I'm probably not going to put any money on this game. I think if Cam Rising was playing, they'd probably be a 10.5-point favorite. If I was say 7.5, 10.5 around that area. And I'd probably lay the Utes, but without Cam Rising, I mean, having that veteran quarterback, it does mean a lot. And I mean, Florida has that. They have their veteran quarterback with Graham Mertz, but he's not done anything to show us that he can light up a scoreboard. He's a handoff specialist. I mean that with all respect. I mean, if you go watch his games, you watch his 3 years worth of film, he might have 80 passes you can watch. I mean, I'm being serious. The dude is a handoff specialist, comes from the offense that he was in. So no hate, but I don't see Florida having a turnaround season this year. This definitely can kick their season into a better, where, like you said, they can overachieve. But we also said that last year, and they had the better quarterback last year, and they end up winning, and still their season didn't turn out the way they wanted it to, or the way people were expecting it to, with Anthony Richardson being at the helm. So I'm expecting Utah to pull this one out. I think it's going to be a lot closer than what it would have been if Cam Rising was playing. But I still think Utah's the better team. Like you said, they've built this program up. They're a dominant program in their conference, which their conference is about to be no more. But it wasn't like that the last 4 or 5 years, and they've been a competitor in that conference. And they're one of the better teams, making bowl games, making bigger bowl games. I think they have a lot more depth, and I think that their talent is a lot better at every position than Florida's. So I think that they're gonna, end up winning this game. I would, if I'm betting anything, it would be the money line on this game. But I'm not a huge money line guy because payouts really aren't that great. But if I were to bet, I'd bet Utah money line. I just think that Utah's got it, and I'm not high on Florida. Florida fans don't hate me, but they're going to be boo-boo this year, man. Maybe I'm wrong, and I hope for the SEC's sake I am wrong, but I think the Pac-12 is going to come in and steal one from the SEC this week. It's a revenge game for Utah. You know, they lost it last year, so, anything can happen.
Yeah, I'm just really looking forward to seeing how these teams match up. It's kind of fascinating because very similar styles with these two teams. Like, they both want to win the same way. They want to run the football. They want to play good defense. They want to control the clock, make things easier for their quarterback. And same if that was Cam Rising back there instead of Bryson Barnes, right, who's going to start for Utah tomorrow night. So both these teams kind of have the same identity in a lot of ways. I've been reading and researching a lot about Florida and just trying to get content on them more. And I thought it was fascinating. I heard from Billy Napier was doing an interview and said that he actually talked to Wisconsin staff about Graham Mertz during the recruiting process because of all the portal quarterbacks in there, like this was the one guy Billy Napier really targeted. Like this is a guy he really, wanted to commit to him and come be the quarterback at Florida. And, on the surface, you're thinking like, what, Graham Mertz, like you said, a handoff specialist, like doesn't really seem a fit. But he had a conversation with Wisconsin's staff, and they actually admitted that they really underutilized him and really didn't develop him the right way necessarily, or didn't do a great job of developing him, and kind of taking advantage of some of the things he could do well. And I thought it was fascinating for a staff to kind of come out and say that, kind of almost in a way throwing your own self under the bus, like saying that you kind of failed a kid and didn't develop him in the proper way. And so, and I think that really opened his eyes and like, hey, there may be something here that we haven't seen yet. Like there's more talent here than meets the eye, kind of, or maybe what was being shown at Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. So I do think he has a lot of faith in him and belief that he can develop him and get the best out of him, because I do think there is more talent there than what has been shown before. So I did think that was really a fascinating kind of dynamic there. I actually watched a video on their YouTube channel, Florida Football posted, and the continuity of this team really is impressive. And like you said, I'm not super high on Florida this year either. I don't think their win total is going to be great, but I do think like the culture he's building, and obviously we know what he's doing in 2024 recruiting. But I think regardless, they're definitely going in the right direction. But I thought that was an interesting little tidbit, with Graham Mertz and kind of learning that about him. And like I said earlier, what this would do for not only Graham Mertz, but the Florida program, if they could pull this game off. Obviously, they have a much better shot with Cam Rising. It's definitely going to be difficult. The crowd's going to be pumped. I mean, this is a top 15 team, super experienced. They played in a lot of big games. So, like I said, it's going to be who controls the line of scrimmage. And which quarterback can limit mistakes and make the plays when they are available. And I may surprise some people with this, but I think Florida's going to pull out a close one, honestly. I've really went back and forth on this. I could see – I don't say that with a ton of confidence because I really am not confident in either outcome, but it wouldn't shock me if Florida I think their D-line's going to be good. I think they can maybe stop or slow down Utah's run game a little bit. And then they got two legit running backs. So if they can get Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne going downhill and maybe make things a little bit easier for Graham Mertz. But yeah, this is going to be a great game. I'm super excited for this, and I'm really excited that we have a good Thursday night game to look forward to, because sometimes we don't. Some years we do, some we don't. So this one to me is – there's a lot of unknowns for week one games, but this one has even more unknowns, which makes it that much more intriguing to me. So I'm excited to see it. Should be a great game, and maybe the Gators will pull it off. We'll see, but it should be a really good physical game. Like I said, both teams want to win the same way. So it's going to be who controls the line of scrimmage, and we should be in for a good one tomorrow night.
Absolutely. I'm super pumped. We are literally less than 24 hours away from kick.
But kind of pivoting now to some of our Saturday games, I think a game that's flying under the radar a little bit, at least nationally, is this South Carolina-North Carolina game. It's not flying under our radar, I can tell you that much, because we got a legit quarterback matchup in this game.
Yeah.
Spencer Rattler, Drake Maye. Man, I'm excited for this. Should be some fireworks. I think the over-under 64, which some people are thinking that's a little low. Not surprised it's that, just because of, it's week one. You never know how teams may not come out firing on all cylinders. Maybe you have a little uptick in penalties or some turnovers. So not shocked at the line on the over-unders at 64. Think that's probably about right, but North Carolina's a slight favorite in this game. It started out about a pick 'em, but it's a 2.5 point line for North Carolina now. But kind of give me your thoughts on this game, what you're looking forward to in this, kind of epic quarterback matchup.
I want to see if South Carolina can build off of how they ended their season last year. Their last 3 weeks of the season, I mean, they caught lightning in a bottle. And, I mean, especially in that Tennessee game, they went nuts. And the Clemson game, I mean, they were a completely different team from week 1 through 8. The last 3-4 weeks of the season, they finally found their identity. I think that is going to trickle over into this season. I really hope it does. We all know what I thought about Spencer Rattler last year. I kind of gave him some heat. I was a hater. I'll say it. I was a hater, but then he grew on me, man. He grew on me throughout the year, and as the season progressed, and I don't think he's the same little tool bag that he was coming out of high school. I think he's a lot better. I think he's a lot more mature, and he came back. He chose to come back, and really, I think he has embraced this leadership role that he has taken on, and that he has to be as the quarterback. But Shane Beamer, got him for a reason. He wanted him to stay. He talked him into staying, and Spencer Rattler obviously made that decision himself. But Beamer was a big part in recruiting him back, essentially. So I think it's going to be a great game. But I think North Carolina's probably got the edge when it, just looking at it on paper. But I think that the over/under is a little high, and I only say that because of the new clock. It stops. The clock doesn't stop for first downs. It only stops for incomplete passes, and I believe if you go out of bounds. But it doesn't stop for first downs until the last 2 minutes of the second quarter and the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. So it's kind of NFL-esque, I would say. But I anticipate whichever team gets the lead, that they're going to try to control the clock and have a little clock management type to keep the ball out of the other quarterback's hands, because there are 2 high-power, big-name quarterbacks going into here. I mean, you got Drake Maye, who's a preseason Heisman talks. The guy is a dog. There was a lot of talks in the offseason after last year that people wanted him to come to Alabama and transfer to Alabama, and that would have been, I mean, you were one of them, and I honestly thought that it was a real possibility that he would, because like we were talking about, he's one of the top quarterbacks in the nation, and that would have been a huge get for Alabama. But he decided to stay at North Carolina and be with his guys. So I think that North Carolina's got the edge, and I honestly think North Carolina's going to win. I'm probably going to bet the 2.5 on North Carolina, just because, I don't know, I feel like there's a little more, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but there's a little more doubt with South Carolina than there is North Carolina. You kind of have a little more positivity on North Carolina and a little more belief in them, or I do anyway. So I think North Carolina's going to hold it out, because I don't really know what to think about South Carolina's defense right now. I really don't. Their offense, I think, is going to be fine. I think they're going to be able to march the ball down the field and put it in the end zone. I just don't know how that defense is going to be for South Carolina, and what they're going to be able to do, and if they're going to be able to hold Drake Maye under wraps. So I like North Carolina in this one, but I do think that the over/under is a little high, because, again, I think that the team that gets the lead early is going to try and control the clock and bleed the clock down and keep the ball out of the other quarterback's hands, because both of these quarterbacks can make something happen at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, I really want to see in this game how aggressive South Carolina comes out, because I really think they're going to start the game pretty aggressive. Like, their strength is Spencer Rattler and Juice Wells and Nicholas Harbor and Trey Knox. Like, they've got some really good pass catchers, and I think they're going to come out and test this North Carolina defense early. This was the worst defense in the ACC last year. They do return a lot, but I think they want to find out early, what they're going against. So I would expect them to come out, be aggressive, and attack early. Like you, I would probably lean the under, maybe just because, like you said, I do think the coordinator from North Carolina last year, Phil Longo, is at Wisconsin now. They're going to be a little bit more running the ball. They're going to try to establish the run a little bit more. I mean, Drake Maye was their leading rusher last year. So with Dow Loggins at South Carolina now, I think they're going to want to be a little bit more balanced. I do think they'll come out throwing early, because I think they want to attack the secondary, but should be interesting. Like I said, I want to see the aggression from South Carolina. Try to build a lead early. And then I think they'll try to, like I said, keep Drake Maye on the sidelines as much as possible. And vice versa for North Carolina. They're going to want to keep Spencer Rattler and this South Carolina offense on the sideline as much as possible because their defense was really, really bad last year. So I don't have a ton of belief that North Carolina's defense is going to be a lot better. So I'm actually leaning South Carolina in this game.
Okay.
Just because I like I said, I don't trust North Carolina's defense. Don't really trust South Carolina's a ton either, to be honest. But I think Spencer Rattler, if he can take care of the football and like you mentioned, build on his performance the last 3 games, he threw 10 touchdowns to 3 picks. He looked like a totally different quarterback the last 3 games of the season. If he can kind of build on that and play more mistake-free, I think that's going to put South Carolina in a really good position to pull this one off. And I say both of these two, I don't have great confidence in either because, I mean, these are, I call proverbial coin flip games. Like, I mean, the line's within 3 or 4 points. You can make a case either way. So I don't pick either with like a ton of confidence, but I'm really excited for this game. I mean, the quarterback matchup speaks for itself. But I kind of want to see the strategy of both of these teams and kind of, I guess, see if I'm thinking along the same lines as they are. And I do want to see how aggressive South Carolina comes out early in this game and tries to kind of establish things a little bit. They have been banged up at receiver, but Shane Beamer said Juice Wells, Nicholas Harbor, they're healthy and good to go. So expect them to be at 100% and looking to attack early.
Absolutely. And the game of the weekend, clearly, plain as day, this is as early as you can get and have national championship ties to it. It is the LSU and Florida State game on Sunday night. It's a standalone game, I believe. I believe it's a standalone game. I don't think there's any other teams playing on Sunday. I could be wrong on that. But
no, you're
I
right.
know
It's standalone.
that's what I thought. So this has national championship implications for sure. The loser of this game is going to be set behind the 8 ball immediately. I mean, this was a big game last year that everyone thought and everyone anticipated LSU to just walk in there and take the win easily, and they ended up letting it slip away. They did work their way back or whatever, but I think the loser of this game definitely puts themselves behind the 8 ball, and it's going to have to scratch and claw, and will have to be perfect the rest of the season if they have even a sniff at the playoff hopes. So this is the biggest game. Mason, what's his last name for LSU that's not going to be able to play this year or this game?
Mason Smith.
He's out this game. He was suspended for the first game of the season by NCAA. And then their running back, John Emery, he's also out this game. But this is the 3rd year in a row that he's missed game 1. The previous 2 years were for academic reasons. I haven't seen a reason why he is out this game. But their running back field they're loaded. They're going to be fine. But LSU is a 2.5-point favorite, and I think this game honestly should be a pick 'em. I mean, obviously we know where the money's going, but I think this game should be a pick 'em because this is going to be one of the better games of the college football season, and it's in week 1, which is crazy to think about. I mean, 2 months down the road, nobody, that's the wrong word to use, but 2 months down the road, people are not going to be looking back and thinking about this game because there's going to be so many more great games happening. But this game has potential to be one of the best in the whole college football season. So I'm extremely excited about it. I want to know how much better Jaden Daniels has gotten because he came on as the year progressed last year. He got better and better and better. He's a legit contender, I think, to potentially be in the Heisman running at the end of the year if he has the year that everyone's expecting him to have. But this is really a put up or shut up game for both teams. And this is probably the best team they've had since 2013 when they won it all. They've kind of struggled, roster wise the last 9-10 years. They're finally back in the realistic hunt for a national title and an ACC title as well. So I'm excited to see what these two teams put on for us and what we're able to take away from them. But if I'm giving my honest opinion, I think LSU is going to win. I think they just got the better guys. They're a little more experienced. They got they got the taste of the championship game last year and kind of got throttled. The scoreboard did not show how bad they got beat, in my opinion. So I'm excited to see how much better they've gotten and what's going to be different about their team this year than what we saw last year. I know early in the season last year for LSU and the end of the season were completely different teams. But when you're a team that's expected to go to make the playoffs, you can't have that complete 180 switch in the champion or in your season. You have to just gradually progress game after game, and it can't be a complete 180. Like I said, it's just a completely different team. So they're expected to go in there and win this game. I think there's more pressure on LSU and Brian Kelly to perform and win this game than there is FSU. But make no mistake about it, FSU 100% has a lot of pressure on them as well. But I think the more pressure is on LSU than FSU.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, what more could you really ask for in week one to have playoff implications already on the line? I mean, like you said, this is a critical game for both teams to position themselves. Like, imagine having this win, this non-conference win on your resume. If you're comparing yourself to some other, say, one-loss teams later on in the season, having this win on your resume is going to go a long way for whoever's able to get it done Sunday night. But like you said, I do think a little bit of the pressure is more on LSU. But like I said, it's such a huge game for both teams. Like you mentioned, Florida State, this is the best team they've had since they won the national title in 2013. I mean, they have legit expectations this year of, winning the ACC, making the college football playoff. And I think they have really, they have the team. I mean, they're definitely a contender for sure. I think they have the team that can do it. Like I said, this game is so critical because it's very possible they're going to get two matchups against Clemson. They play them in Death Valley in, I believe, week 4 at the end of September. And then the ACC doesn't have divisions anymore. Top 2 teams make the championship game.
I love that.
Yeah, these two are the overwhelming favorites to be the top 2 teams. They're clearly a cut above the rest of the pack. So it's very possible. Obviously, this game won't affect ACC standings. So very possible you're going to get 2 Florida State Clemson matchups. So Florida State can win this game if they can just split the 2 against Clemson, regardless of which one they win. They very easily could find themselves in the playoffs if they take care of business against everybody else, which they will be favored to do. Which doesn't mean anything, but right. They're going to be better than the rest of the teams on their schedule. Clemson and LSU is really the only 2 I would say that's better or equal to them.
Mm-hmm.
So this game is critical for them as well. But yeah, I think this can be. Obviously, the win last year was a nice statement for Florida State, but LSU week 1 wasn't what they ended up being. So it wasn't – it was a huge win, but it's not as obviously as big as this one would be because, man, I mean, these 2 teams were really the 2 of the surprise teams in all college football last year compared to where they ended up versus where their expectations were coming into the year. So, it's a whole different feel to this game this year, but I expect it to be just as good. It wasn't a really well played game last year. It was really sloppy in a lot of aspects, yeah. But so I expect it to be a little bit more crisper this year. I think these teams will be a little bit more prepared. They're obviously a lot more experienced. FSU and LSU both return a lot of players back from a year ago, so I expect it to be a little bit better of a well played game this year. But I think the result's going to be very similar, though. It's going to be a classic type of feel to it, and I think that's what the result's going to be. I'm like you. I lean LSU slightly here. They're a 2.5-point favorite. I'm not really touching any of the lines we've talked about of the first 3 games tonight. I'm staying away from all of those because they're just too close and too many unknowns for me. But I would lean LSU here. If I'm making a pick. I'm super excited to see, though, Florida State's wideouts go against LSU secondary because you had Keon Coleman transfer in from Michigan State. I think he's going to be a huge player for Florida State this year. You got Johnny Wilson 6'7", an absolute beast on the outside. And then Jordan Travis obviously is a very experienced quarterback, one of the best Florida State's had in some time now. Again, going up against LSU with a lot of transfer guys in the secondary. How are those guys going to gel to start off with? So I think that's the key matchup for me in this game. I can't wait to see how that plays out. Like you mentioned, though, LSU, a couple guys out. Mason Smith with a suspension. Looks like the same for John Emery. So that's going to hurt LSU a little bit, but I still think they have enough making. I think Jaden Daniels will make enough plays to get it done in the end, but should be a instant classic again this year.
I think the guy that's going to have the biggest impact on this game as a whole is probably Harold Perkins. If he can get that back there in the backfield and disrupt the backfield and wreak some havoc, obviously it's going to make it easier on LSU secondary with the wideouts they're going against. I got more faith in LSU just because they've been there in a more recent time. I mean, this game is as close as you can get to a playoff atmosphere in week one. Yeah. I mean, like we've been talking about it. We've gone over that, but there are players that fold under pressure, and there are players that rise and play even better under pressure. And Harold Perkins is one of those guys that has definitely rose to the occasion every time that he's had a chance to play in a big game. So I expect to hear Harold Perkins' name called a bunch, and I think he's going to be the deciding factor in this game in LSU's front seven. Because if you can get back there and get some pressure on Jordan Travis, it's going to make their day a lot harder. It's going to make it a lot harder to get the ball down the field. And I just think Harold Perkins is the guy that's going to end up winning LSU this game.
Yeah, and obviously they're going to feel the loss of Mason Smith, but they feel very good about their depth on their defensive line. As you mentioned, they think they can get pressure on the quarterback. Harold Perkins leads that charge. We talked about his performance last year in that Arkansas game. Really, single-handedly won them the game. I mean, that was the Harold Perkins game. Like, if you didn't know who Harold Perkins was, you knew him after that game in Fayetteville because he absolutely dominated, really, the whole game. But the second half and the closing, stages of that game, he just completely took over. And kind of announced himself as one of the pound for pound best players in college football. So, like you said, I think he's going to have a big game. I think he's going to have a huge year this year. They moved him around a lot in the offseason. He played on the edge a lot last year. They moved him inside some. So I think he's a guy that's extremely versatile. They're going to deploy him in a bunch of different ways to confuse a quarterback on the opposing side. So, like I said, I think he's due for a big game. I think that defensive line, that depth there, is going to open up some opportunities for him to wreak havoc on this game. So I am going to lean LSU slightly. Man, I'm just so excited for this game. And I love these games with playoff implications in weeks 1 and 2. Like, man, you can't ask for that. That's the special thing about college football is, like, you got to be ready to go from week 1. There's not a margin for error, and especially with this 4-team playoff. It's going to be a little bit more going to 12 next year and beyond that. But, man, I mean, playoff atmosphere week 1, I don't know what more you could ask for. I wish this was on somebody's home turf. It's in Orlando. I would love to see this game in Tallahassee or in Baton Rouge would make it a little bit better, but I'm not complaining. Playoff atmosphere and playoff implications in week 1, it doesn't get much better than that.
Absolutely not. I kind of want to dive into some games that are going to be played this weekend and some lines where I think what we can cash in and get some coin on this weekend. And the first game I'm going with is Kentucky. They're a 26.5-point favorite, and they're playing Ball State. I honestly think this is going to be a lot like the Notre Dame and Navy game. I just think that Ball State is not even close to prepared to walk into the field and play Kentucky. I think that they're going to get embarrassed out there. I think Kentucky is going to dominate, and I think Kentucky is going to win by like 30 or more. It's a 26.5-point line right now. Kentucky is a 26.5-point favorite. I would jump on that as soon as you possibly can because again, Devin Leary and company, they're coming to make a statement. Mark Stoops he's no loser. I'll tell you that. The dude knows how to win with a lot less talent than everybody else has. But the thing about this game is he's got a lot more talent than Ball State does. They're going to be ready to come out there and play. They're going to play poised and they're going to execute well, and they don't make many mistakes. A lot of the mistakes last year they had turnover-wise was on the quarterback, lots of interceptions. I don't think Devin Leary is going to do that this year. I think Kentucky. We've talked about them. We know we did the preview, but they're going to steamroll Ball State. They're going to beat them by more than 27 points or by 27 or more. You can go ahead and lock that in. Put the mortgage on it. Take out 2 mortgages and put them both on it, and you'll walk away a rich SOB. I promise you that.
So you're saying it's going to be a nice afternoon or nice morning, I guess I should say, for Barry and Brown and Danke and some of those. You think they're getting loose on Ball State secondary?
I think they at least get a touchdown apiece, and one of them probably walks away with 2 of them. I'm telling you, they're going to get tugs for days, cuz.
I love it, man. Riding with Kentucky right off the bat, so that's going to be good. I got a couple bet picks I like. I actually pulled up a couple lines that I'm going to swap to here so that you can see. Hopefully it should be sharing. Yeah, there we go. So got a few bets. I did listen to Late Kick earlier today. I'm with Josh Pate. I'm riding on that Ramen Noodle Express here early in the season. I'm liking Butch Jones's Arkansas State squad. They're plus 35.5 against Oklahoma. I'm kind of with him. I was feeling this as well, but after he said it, it kind of confirmed it to me. I'm picking TCU to steamroll Dion in this first game at Colorado. I got him minus 20.5. And then the final pick, Clemson. It's a Monday night game against Duke. I was kind of leaning Duke because the line was a little bit higher. I think it was around 17 when I looked at it. It's kind of dropped some from the last few weeks. It was down to, I think, 12.5 at one point, but I got it at 13.5. I wanted to grab it before it went to 14.
Yeah,
I was kind of leaning Duke if it was in that 17 territory, but since it's kind of come down, I like Clemson. I think it's going to be a really competitive game, but I think they do win by 2 touchdowns here. Couple other ones that I haven't taken yet, but I'm really strongly considering. I think Nevada could cover the 38 against USC. Like I said, USC in week 0 felt a lot like a scrimmage. So I feel like they're probably going to be rotating a lot of guys in here again. I think Nevada scores enough to keep it within the number. I think Lincoln Riley's going to light them up like a Christmas tree. But I do think Nevada scores enough, kind of like San Jose State did, to keep it within the number. I just think 38 is probably a little too much there. Any other picks you're kind of leaning towards here in week 1?
I like Baylor, 27.5-point favorite against Texas State. I mean, Texas State's boo-boo. We got TJ Finley leaving Auburn expecting to go take that job with ease. He didn't win the job. If anybody, and I'm talking crap on Auburn here, if anybody takes TJ Finley on their roster to think it'll potentially make them better, they ain't got nobody, because this man is cheeks. Baylor is they're good. I mean, they are an established team. They got a good coach. They've been there before. They made some noise last year and the year before that. I like Baylor minus 27.5. Early, I know it's an early week. There's a lot of unknowns. This is probably the hardest week to bet in all of sports and in all of college football. Is week 1 is the hardest week to bet because there's just so much of we don't know. But I can almost guarantee that Baylor is going to steamroll Texas State. So lay the Bears at 27.5. If it goes any higher than 27.5, I probably would lay off. But 27.5, I'm liking that.
Yeah, I had to switch back over because I wanted to pull up this Hawaii line. Is this a Friday? I think this is a Friday. Yeah, it's a Friday night game. Okay, so late Friday night. You really got to stay up and be excited about college football. Stay up for this one.
Hawaii's a 3.5-point dog.
At home, I'm laying the points with Hawaii here, and maybe even the money line, to be honest with you, because I think Stanford is absolutely terrible. Hawaii's not great either, but I was impressed with them week 0, and that they do have a game under their belt now. I think that will help them. So I think they could pull the upset here against Stanford. It's crazy how far Stanford's fallen, because this was one of the premier programs. Andrew Luck was there, Christian McCafferty. That time period for Stanford football, and it's not what it used to be anymore. They got a first-year head coach in Troy Taylor. So, but I'm not expecting a lot from Stanford this year, and I think they probably dropped one week 1 to Hawaii, or at least probably not looking very well. I'm looking at a few other ones. I mentioned Arkansas State. I do think they keep that within the number at Oklahoma. I like Butch Jones, so I'm pulling for him to keep it in the number there. I'm kind of with you on Kentucky and Ball State. I just think that 26 is a little bit too low. And then I already mentioned TCU. I just think it's early for Colorado week 1 going against a TCU team that's probably pretty hungry. They got a sour taste in their mouth after what happened in the national title game. They're breaking in a bunch of new pieces, though. I just think they got too much for Colorado week 1. And then now that I'm seeing that, I kind of want to talk about this Tennessee-Virginia game a little bit. The line's at 28. Do you have a feel on that anyway? And we can kind of preview that as we discuss a little bit.
Hammer down on the Vols. Hammer down. Virginia's been scrambling the last few years. Tennessee's starting to hit their groove. They got Josh Heupel, offensive guru. They're gonna toss the ball around. Obviously, they want to establish the run game early. I just don't think Virginia has the guys or the defense to be able to stop this high-powered offense. I know it's a different quarterback. It's not the same team as last year. They lost some guys, lost a lot of key weapons, but they reloaded. I'm telling you, Tennessee. I like Tennessee minus 28. I like it a lot. In another game, I really like South Alabama. Man, they're going to be good this year. I've been seeing a lot. There's some preseason favorites in their conference. They got a bunch of skilled players who have played a lot of football for South Alabama. They've been together a while. The camaraderie is good there. They're a 6.5-point dog to Tulane. Obviously, we know what Tulane's made of. They beat Oklahoma a few years ago. They're always a competitive, really good, hard-nosed football team. But I like South Alabama covering that 6.5 points. I just don't think Tulane is a whole touchdown better than South Alabama. I think they're about as even as it can get. I think it comes down to the line, and I would maybe even hit the South Alabama money line. It's a plus 208 money line right now, but I'm definitely laying South Alabama plus 6.5. And if it goes up, I'm even putting even more money on it. But definitely lay Tennessee 28 or lower, and definitely lay South Alabama 6.5 plus 6.5.
One additional one I like as well, Penn State. They're a 20.5-point favorite right now over West Virginia. Neil Brown's seat at West Virginia is scalding hot. This is a huge year for him. Like, he needs to have at least a pretty decent year to save his job. I think he may be the first Power 5 coach to beat Can this year. I think Neil Brown's probably gone by midseason. So I don't know if it's really a hot take, but I'm going to say Neil Brown's the first Power 5 coach to get axed this year. His seat's hot.
Right.
I'm pretty high on Penn State. Like, I like their team a lot. I think Drew Aller is going to step in and play well at quarterback. They got 2 beasts at running back, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. I think Penn State's a legit playoff contender. There's 3 big teams in the Big Ten this year. It's always the discussion of Ohio State and Michigan and then everybody else in the Big Ten. I think it's a big 3 in the Big Ten this year. I think Penn State is on the kind of level with Ohio State and Michigan. I think they're a top 10 caliber team, and I think they're a legit playoff contender. So I'm laying the 20.5 with them against West Virginia. I have no confidence in West Virginia at all. And I think this will further seal Neil Brown's fate. I was actually pretty high on Neil Brown. I thought he did a really good job at Troy. It just hasn't panned out for whatever reason at West Virginia. And I think James Franklin is going to help seal his fate just a little bit further in week 1 here.
I like it. I'm going to lay them with you.
So, and I think this situation with Neil Brown is kind of, I think it's going to be one of those situations where I think he's canned at midseason. And it's one of those situations that they're going to look back on like, why didn't we just kind of make a move in the offseason? I don't know.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
felt like his leash just isn't very long there. So we'll see. But I just don't have a ton of confidence in them. I just think Penn State's just too legit. Too many weapons, man. That running back room is one of the best in college football by far. So, and those guys are just sophomores too, which is insane. So, I mean, two-headed beasts at running back from Penn State. I think they're going to make some noise this year. But yeah, I'm liking them early here at 20.5. But like you said, this week one is so challenging for betting. I mean, it's tough every week because you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds that don't play consistent a lot of times. So, but when you don't have any real data to go off of, you're just kind of going off some projections. It makes it that much tougher. So, not a huge list of bet picks this week. We'll probably add to them a little bit more as the year goes on. We start getting a little bit more data and intel on kind of what they're doing. Like I said, still very challenging though, but probably not quite as many bet picks. If we have any additional picks, we'll post them on Twitter or X now at Saturdays_SEC. Be sure to follow us over there as well as liking the video and subscribing to the channel. We've added a couple subscribers lately. We really appreciate it. Our last video had the most that we've had. So looks like people are looking up some more content here to get ready for the college football season. So we hope you keep tuning in with us because we got a lot more content coming this year.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
But kind of just a little bit further with our previews here, is there any other games in the SEC or nationally that you're obviously are I know interested in, but any more you kind of want to preview or some stuff around the league that you're kind of looking forward to this weekend, even in some of these, group of five or FCS kind of matchups this week? Are there any other storylines you're kind of looking at and seeing how guys perform?
I want to see obviously how Auburn performs, but I want to see the identity of what this Auburn team is going to be this year. And the biggest storyline that's really dominated college football offseason is what is the quarterback issue going to be at Alabama? Is it going to be resolved after week 1? Is it going to be resolved after week 4? Is it going to be resolved week 2 in the biggest game of their season potentially? Those are the two. I know obviously that's maybe a little biased because we are from Alabama and I am an Auburn fan, but I want to see the identity and how Auburn attacks this game and what they're going to do to change the aura around the program right now and what Hugh Freeze is going to do and what it's going to look like for the foreseeable future. And honestly, I think Jalen Milroe is going to be the quarterback. I think he's going to be the quarterback all year. Maybe I'm wrong, but I want to see what that quarterback room is going to do or what it's going to be. And if one of those guys is going to take the reins early and be that guy and let it last throughout the whole year.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I'm looking forward to most this weekend. Like you mentioned, I think Jalen Milroe is going to get the first shot. He's going to get the first snaps against Middle Tennessee State. I do think they're going to play all three of the quarterbacks. I do think they'll play Milroe, Simpson, and Buckner. I think they're all going to give them an opportunity. But usually the guy, I think Milroe is probably going to be – I think he's going to be the quarterback for this team, honestly. I think his skill set and the way they want to play this year kind of go hand in hand a little bit. So I do think this style of offense with Tommy Rees will fit his skill set very well. So I do think he's going to be the quarterback, but I do think they are, since nobody's necessarily taking the reins of it, I think they are going to give all three of the quarterbacks a crack at it against Middle Tennessee State and just see how they perform in live action, live bullets flying. So I'm excited to see that. And then kind of not only how they look in this game, but how they kind of play that going forward. Like, if one of the other quarterbacks looks better, or is that guy going to start against Texas or play against Texas? It's going to be a fascinating kind of situation to see how it evolves, and I want to see kind of how they split those reps up in game. Is Milroe going to get the first half or just the first quarter, and then make a little switch? So don't really know how that's going to play out yet, which will be intriguing to see. And I'm like you. I want to see how Auburn comes out, kind of what their identity is. Um, they're playing against UMass. I think it's going to be a massacre, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
If that line drops under 35, don't let that line drop to 34.5, or I'm probably on that. So, but I think they're going to come out with a statement, to be honest with you. I think UMass probably in for a long trip back to Massachusetts after this one. But yeah, I'm like you. I want to see what their identity is, out of the gate, kind of what the vibe around it. Obviously, game one of the Hugh Freeze era, I expect it to be, pretty crazy down there. Obviously, a lot of hype, a lot of momentum, just generally around the program. So I'm curious to see how they come out a little bit. But yeah, we got 3 or 4 huge matchups around the league this week. Man, I'm just so excited it's here, and can't wait to see kind of what happens in these matchups and as we go forward.
Absolutely. The biggest thing I'm looking for Auburn is the trenches. How is the offensive line and the defensive line going to play? The offensive line is, I've said it a million times on this podcast, it is where your offense starts. But what Auburn wants to do in establishing the run and being a run-first team, they have to have that offensive line presence that's going to be there and going to dominate. I mean, plain and simple. I know it's a lot easier to dominate a UMass than it is an Arkansas or a Mississippi State or an Alabama, but you got to start somewhere, and you got to have you got to lay the foundation to build off of, and that's what I'm looking forward to, is how the defensive line and the offensive line is going to play, and we're going to see the potential of what this season can be week one, and how those two sides of the ball play. Because if they come out with their hair on fire and they show that they're capable of doing it, I'll be much happier and much more. I'll have a more positive outlook on the rest of the games for the rest of the year. And I know, again, it's week one, it's a smaller opponent, but that laying the foundation is the biggest thing. And I really just want to know what it's going to be and what I have to look forward to the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Like I said, even some of these games against smaller opponents, seeing how the team sets the tone for the year is always fun to watch. But yeah, I'm just glad we're finally here. Got some really nice week one matchups, and we're gonna have a lot to break down on our next podcast. And I love the way the games are scheduled this week, with the Thursday night game with Florida and Utah. Then you got obviously Sunday night with FSU and LSU. Obviously, you got the whole slate on Saturday, and Clemson and Duke Monday night. So
5 straight days of college football.
Yeah, you can't beat that. We'll probably, I would assume, be recording during the Clemson Duke game, probably. So that one may be going on as we're recording, because we're going to have to get it done Monday night to recap this whole weekend. It's going to be epic. Mm-hmm. But everybody can rejoice. College football is back, and we got a full season ahead of us. I think this season, and when I look across the landscape, like, there are so many teams. Like, I think there's a good 12, 15 teams that are playoff caliber in my mind. I think you got 3 or 4 in the SEC. I think you got 3 in the Big Ten. You got a couple in the ACC. You got a couple in the Pac-12. Like, it should be an awesome year this year. Obviously, these teams jockeying for position in a 4-team playoff. I mean, the stakes are that much higher this year. And you mentioned the implications of LSU and FSU, how big of a game that is when you've only got a 4-team playoff. This isn't for seeding. This could be who gets in the playoff or not on September 3rd. So, that's the beauty of college football, though. So I'm excited for it. We really appreciate everybody tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe to the channel. A lot of great content coming your way this year, and we will get back with y'all early next week. So y'all enjoy your weekend of college football. It's back.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.